What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Welcome back to the Respawn, where I answer your questions. Today we're talking about the next hero, Torb in the meta, and more. First question for the day, which category do you think the next hero will fall under and why? So I know some of you guys are thinking, well, didn't we just get a new hero? Well, kinda sorta. We're actually in the middle of the hero release cycle. And on top of that, Blizzard has been promoting BlizzCon, which is where we're going to get the announcement for the next hero. So they're kind of already making the excitement for the next hero already. For those of you that have been watching my channel for a while, you know I'm pretty accurate with my predictions for hero skins, new characters, maps, all that sort of stuff. But I gotta tell you, on this next one, I'm not really all that sure on what it's going to be. So I'll give you my best guess. Prior to the release of Hammond, they beefed up a couple of characters, namely Reaper and Mei, and they gave a kind of odd reason for it. They specifically said that they wanted to make characters that were going to be anti-tank because they were concerned the triple tank and quad tank lineups were going to be too strong. But as we've seen, Reaper and Mei really aren't having much of an impact on that at all, because there's quite a few teams that are running a triple tank dive, or the GOATS comp, which is 3 tanks and 3 supports. And Reaper and Mei, while they can be used as counters, they're really not doing much to affect it. They obviously knew ahead of time that they were going to be releasing Hammond, the highest health character in the entire game, and they also knew that they were going to be changing Ana so that she was going to be stronger and more viable, thus making the large triple tank, quad tank lineups even better. So it would make sense that, okay, if we're going to release Hammond, we're going to buff Ana, then we probably should put in something into the game a little bit after that to kind of balance it all out. So my best guess, some sort of DPS that is functionally an anti-tank character. Speed round, let's go. What is the hardest hero for you to play? That would be Widowmaker. It doesn't matter what game I've ever played in the past, CSGO, Call of Duty, Team Fortress 2, whatever it happens to be. Anytime a character has a scoped weapon, I just could never really get the hang of it. I don't know why, it just couldn't really, so it would be Widowmaker. What happens when Mei freezes a shield or a barrier? Well, you can't actually freeze the barrier. It just does damage and reduces the health of the barrier, and that's it. Is water wet? Only in liquid form. Possible changes to tanks, such as Rein and Hammond. Reinhardt needs very light, emphasis, very light, CC reduction in some form. Not like Fortify or something like that, just a very limited CC reduction so he doesn't get knocked around so much. And Hammond just needs more damage. I would say not more damage in the form of his abilities, more damage as in total ammo for his primary weapon. How do you feel about the amount of lore we get from Overwatch? At this point, I really could not possibly care less about the story in the game, so I don't care how much lore we get. We could get 0 from now until the end of time and it wouldn't make a difference to me. Do you like bread? Yes. What is the use for Moira's ultimate? Coalescence does 140 healing per second and 70 damage per second. Because of that, you should be primarily using it for healing. Now, it's not going to be as good of a defensive ult as a Zenyatta Transcendence or the Lucio Sound Barrier, but it's still pretty solid at keeping your team alive. But the big strength of it is that you can get the Coalescence ult quite frequently, which means you should be using it quite frequently. Now, I'm not saying burn it as soon as you get it, but you really shouldn't be saving it either. Like, if you can use it in a fight to keep your team alive or to get an extra elimination or two, then go ahead and just burn it and use it to win more in that fight. But it's actually a pretty solid ultimate. It's just the problem is people hold on to it for far too long. Who do you think will get the next BlizzCon skin? The first one was Bastion, second one was Winston. Are they actually trying to spread it out among the different roles? I don't know. Maybe. If they are, then it would be a support who gets it, so who's it gonna be? Well, I don't think it's gonna be one of the new ones, so my guess would probably be Ana, Lucio, or Zenyatta. If I had to pick one of those, I don't know, maybe Zenyatta? Would an ability that makes an ally immune to CC for a set duration be too strong? If not, would it fit better on a tank or a support? Well, two of the tank category characters already have something like that. Orisa has Fortify, which gives her damage resistance and CC immunity, and Zarya has the Bubble, which, again, provides some sort of resistance to damage. In this case, it's a barrier that absorbs the damage, but it also gives some level of CC immunity. You basically can't be stunned when you're in the bubble. You can still be trapped by a Junkrat trap and stuff like that, but you can't be put to sleep, you can't get stunned, none of that stuff. So, yeah, they already have that stuff in the game, but they're not going to add an ability that is just purely CC immunity, because it would be a waste of an ability. There are a lot of characters in the game right now that just don't have any crowd control whatsoever. Genji, Hanzo, Widowmaker, Bastion, Torbjorn, Symmetra, Soldier 76. I mean, there's so many different characters in the game that have no crowd control. If you gave a character an ability that was purely a crowd control immunity, then it would just be worthless against those characters. And there's nothing in the game that's completely worthless against the other heroes. I mean, there's going to be different levels of effectiveness for sure, but there's nothing in the game that's completely useless against it. So if they were to add another thing, kind of similar to Zarya, then they would have to have the CC immunity in addition to something else. Maybe be damage resistance, maybe it's a movement buff or something like that, right? Like maybe a support could give that little thing to a teammate, they get a quick burst of speed, and they get immunity to CC. That I could see being added to the game. Can you tell me how I can get my comments to appear at the end of your videos? The comment of the video is generally picked because it's funny or it's interesting. If I can't find anything that I think is particularly funny or interesting, then usually I'll look for a comment from someone who's a regular, basically a name that I recognize who comments on a lot of my videos, always likes them, follows, retweets on Twitter, all that sort of stuff, and I'll pick their comment and put it in. But generally the best way is to just be funny or interesting, pretty much it. Do you think Lucio will get a rock metal skin like his jazzy skin, complete with the music too? As a fan of rock and metal, I would say that would be an awesome thing to have. I don't know if they're going to do it though, because they might say that it's too far out of the norm for the character. But I think there's a lot of possibilities with that sort of stuff. So they already have the default techno one, and then they have the jazzy one. They could do one for rock and metal. They could do one for classical. They could do stuff for a variety of different countries or genres of music and all that sort of stuff. They could have some kind of Chinese one. They could have Korean K-pop as one, right? I'm sure everyone would hate that. But I think there's a lot of possibilities, and sure, it would be pretty cool to see that kind of stuff added to the game. Whether or not they're going to be willing to do it, that's another story. What is your opinion on Dive? Would you like it to stay the meta or leave the meta? I don't really care what kind of comp we have in the meta, as long as there's a good, viable counter to it. The problem that I had with Dive, and that a lot of people had with Dive, was there was no possible counter other than just simply a mirror match of Dive. So it was always the same characters over and over again. I think now we're in a much better situation. It's a little bit more varied than it was before. Dive is still popular. There's different versions of it. There's the triple tank, there's the disrupt, and some others. But as long as there are viable counters to something, I don't care what kind of comp we have in the meta. Do you think that power creep, mobility, damage, CC, etc. is a problem for the game? When it comes to damage, no, that's not a problem at all. When it comes to CC, also no, because there's very little CC in the game, despite how much people complain about it. Mobility, however, is a big problem, because there are characters like Torbjorn, like Bastion, that are just completely left in the dust. Characters that have low mobility are really, really hurting in most situations, so yes, mobility is kind of a problem, and as you've been seeing, a lot of the new characters have high mobility, so it might just get worse and worse, and some of them will just be completely left behind. Why didn't Hammond just go into the capsule with Winston when Winston escaped Horizon Lunar Colony? That's actually a really good question because according to Blizzard, they said that Winston and Hammer were really good friends. So why did Winston just leave him behind when the base was getting destroyed? And it doesn't make any sense. And also, why did Hammond have to secretly attach his pod to Winston's if they were like best friends? Again, it doesn't make any sense. The only conclusion I can come up with is bad writing. Does Overwatch need to release heroes more frequently? 3 a year is garbage. I wouldn't say it's garbage. I think it's okay. I think it would be better if it was 4 a year. And I think that's really what they should be going for, is 4 a year. But I don't think 3 is garbage. You think Mercy is a side healer now? I think you mean off healer. Is she an off healer? No. She's still a main healer, but she is the worst of the main healers. I've actually been thinking about this a little bit recently, and she's kind of in a weird spot. She's in between. So if you have Ana and Moira at the top, and then Brigitte, Lucio, Zenyatta at the bottom in terms of raw healing output, Mercy's going to be somewhere in the middle. So she's not an off healer. She's still definitely a main healer, but she's the worst of the main healers. What do you think is the best event and worst event skin? Well, the worst event skin definitely is the May Legendary that we got for the first Christmas event. It was essentially just a reskin of the default, and they charged Legendary costs for it because when you went into an ice block, it had a snowman instead of the standard ice block. So by far, that was the worst event skin that they ever released. As for the best skin, I'm not really sure. Off the top of my head, maybe Cultist Zenyatta? After his rework, will Torb ever be meta? It's entirely possible. If you look at the other characters that have gotten reworks, some of them were really good, some not so much. Mercy went to a 98% pick rate after her rework. D.Va has been one of the most powerful characters in the game since she got her rework. Hanzo went from being garbage tier to the best mid-range DPS hero in the entire game. However, Symmetra got not 1 but 2 reworks, and she's still pretty bad. So, I don't know, it may be. I mean, it depends on what they do with them. Do you think Zen can still be used? Yes, he is an incredibly powerful character. The only problem right now with Zenyatta is that there are so many people running Ana that you have to be way more careful when you use your Transcendence ult, because all it takes is that single Bionade to anti your entire team, and your ult is just garbage. So yes, he can be used, but it's a lot more tricky now. Will there be a Cat Blob skin if Jetpack Cat ever gets added? There absolutely should be. Do you think the PTR is useful? Honestly, not really. Because there aren't that many people that actually use it, and when we give feedback to Blizzard, they just ignore it. Like, I can't tell you how many times there have been issues on the PTR. We tell Blizzard about it, and then they just push it to live anyways. So it's like, why even bother having the PTR? I don't know. They definitely need to pay more attention to it. Is it possible to stack damage boost effects in a single hero, for example, Nano, Supercharge, and Mercy Damage Amplifier? Yes, you can. I made a video that goes over all of that stuff. It shows you how the different effects will stack together, how they work with Zenyatta's Discord Orb and damage resistance and all that sort of stuff. So I'll put a link to that video down below. Is it possible to carry as Mercy or Rein? As Mercy? No. As Rein? Maybe? See, here's the thing. People don't understand what the word carry actually means. It comes from the very earliest versions of Dota-style games. And in those, when they were generally just a mod for like Warcraft or Starcraft or something like that, you could take all of the items and give them to one of your teammates. So what would happen is, everyone on your team would buy all the super expensive damage items or the health items or whatever. They would give them to one person, and that person would carry them and then deal all the damage to the enemy heroes and to the enemy base. So that's where the term carry comes from. So in order to be a carry, you have to deal a significant amount of damage. That is what it means. If someone is using it in any other regard, then they're wrong. So is it possible for Mercy? No. Is it possible for Rein? I mean, maybe if you're constantly getting damage boosted. What advice can you give to someone who has fallen 600 SR in 3 weeks? That's kind of tough because I don't know what characters you like to play, what role you're good in, or what rank you're at right now. But some general stuff is don't solo queue. The solo queue ladder right now is just a mess. You're going to get way too many throwers. Don't do it. And if you can at all possible, use the looking for group tool. If you can't get full 6 stacks, then at least try to get like 1 or 2 other people so that you can have a much better chance of having cooperative teammates. The other thing I can leave you with is a video that I made about avoiding common mistakes. So go and check that out. I'll put a link for that down below as well. And just see if you're doing any of that stuff and try to avoid it. Simply not making mistakes will help you quite a bit. Why does your cat have Instagram? Well, I actually have 2 cats, and they have an Instagram because they are awesome. I'll put a link for that down below. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.